Well, it's an exciting time, everybody, because we've actually got Blizzard's announcement scheduled for the next World of Warcraft expansion, as well as the Warcraft mobile game. So, yeah, that's a new game from Blizzard. It's on mobile, which can bring some bad connotations, but who knows, perhaps it'll end up being decent enough. Okay, let's get into things. So, on March 15th, the next Hearthstone expansion will be announced. Maybe it'll have a theme decently close to the next WoW expansion, who knows? I mean, certainly if it's another dragon-themed Hearthstone expansion, people will very much be thinking. April 19th, then, is the WoW expansion reveal date, so just over a month from now, which, yeah, pretty nice. I'll say overall that was probably half a month later than I would have expected. It may have some implications for my predictions on the release window and things like that. Well, we'll see. And then also, May is when the Warcraft mobile game is going to be revealed. Right now, all we've really heard about that game is just stuff from the earnings call. So very much just it as a product that they want to do this year. We know nothing about the genre of mobile game, the monetization, any integration into World of Warcraft. We have zero idea at this stage, and we'll just have to wait to find out. Okay, let's talk about the next expansion then, because what you're probably wondering is, okay, that's the reveal, well, what does this actually matter to me? What can I expect? Well, we've got to think about what Blizzard's goals are. So, August is when Legion came out. August 2 years after that is when BFA came out. I think ideally Shadowlands would have came out in an August as well. However, it was, because of COVID and all of that, I believe supposed to be September? Was it October? But anyway, it eventually got delayed to when it was delayed, which was in November. Now, if Blizzard have generally wanted to have this 2-year schedule, then yeah, November 2022, I think at the very least, at some point, that has been their internal target release date for this next World of Warcraft expansion. It does stand to reason. However, you then have to think, well, could that release date slip? It could slip. Now, the latest into a year they've ever done a WoW expansion is the 7th of December for Cataclysm. Any later than that, and it's just too close to Christmas, I think, which would probably end up meaning a February 2023 release date. But one of the things that really matters for this is beta. So betas have tended to be like 6 months, right? Now, that would mean that if you had a beta the month after the reveal, then that beta could, end and the expansion could come out that November. It fits, but it is so damn tight. And certainly if that beta ended up being June, well, then if the beta was going to be the normal length of a beta, that would be shorter. So then the question would be, could they conduct a more compressed testing sort of timeline, right? That really is the big question. And for that, I think it could happen maybe. Basically, right? This expansion probably was supposed to have another patch. And I know Ian has said that that's not the case in interviews, but frankly, I would say to you, did Blizzard really plan to deliver less content within a expansion cycle than players would expect based on past expansions? I do not think Blizzard planned to do that. I think Ian maybe doesn't know how bad it looks on him and the team when he obviously has to say that for PR-related reasons. But there's even there was Drust Raid assets that were in early beta data mining. There's the extra sort of portal space in Oribos. There's just things that make sense. And then, of course, the number of seemingly dropped plot lines and things in Shadowlands, or at the very least things that have been underdeveloped. I mean, Venari. What was the point of her? They've seemingly forgotten, And there's actually a decent few other things. And there's just some oddities like how some characters like Bane have had so little to do the whole expansion. It all just screams of an expansion that maybe at some point during beta they just realized, shit, we don't have enough time. And I think they ended up cutting a patch. But I think they made that decision decently early on in the sort of, at least sort of testing or production cycle of this expansion. But anyway, I think that losing that other major patch, that other raid tier, I think that has basically meant that they're decently on schedule, or maybe even a little bit ahead on this next expansion. I absolutely would not be surprised if that was the case. And I think that may allow for a more compressed testing timeline, or at the very least for for the expansion to come out like pretty quickly after testing is done. So I do actually think that is a very possible thing, really, and I would not be surprised if we had a November or December. But that said, I think if any delay was needed, then Q1 2023 is also quite a fair expectation for this next expansion. Now, that would certainly leave the final patch of Shadowlands being quite long, but then the question is, does 9.2.5 have a decent amount of content in it? And there's one or two things we can actually talk about there, because at the very least, we do know that 9.2.5 is going to happen. Blizzard have mentioned it. That's when the cross-faction gameplay is coming in. So, overall, I do think that we will get a beta as soon as humanly possible after the reveal, because they know how tight their timeline is. As for the quality of that beta, I think there's a decent chance it'll be quite good based on the communications that we've seen with Zereth Mortis, because just the community council forum has actually been quite good. They have actually engaged with people and things, they have made changes, that's all been pretty great. Now, if that's going to carry through to the next beta, then perhaps we could expect a more useful beta, right? And if they did indeed cut a patch from this expansion, then yes, that sucks, but at least what could be purchased, at the cost of that patch is being a little bit more on schedule and just, more able to develop this next expansion. So that's basically what I expect. Now, patch 9.2.5 then remains as a bit of a question. So we know it exists and that it's when the cross-faction stuff is coming in. What else, though? Well, I did notice there's 2 sets of the vicious PvP mounts that were added in this patch. And that makes me think, like, will they do another season of PvP? I'm fairly sure that in Mists of Pandaria, they actually did do another season of PvP, and I think they just offered each faction the other faction's original tint of that gear, which is a wee bit strange. But yes, they've done that with PvP before, because I think they know what the requirements of a PvP season are. I think the question then is, do they do anything else? I mean, if I think about time walking, well, they obviously know that there's a hunger for the time walking system to be used a bit better. And I think they've seen the Mage Tower be, there was a few dramas, but it was decently well received. People certainly logged in to play the damn thing. So it makes me wonder if they will do something a bit ballsy, a bit daring with the time walking feature to help us to tide over that period of time. Additionally then, there is another stage in the 9.2 chapter. It's like the epilogue one, but it's not in the quest journal. It doesn't seem to be in the game right now, which makes me think maybe it comes out with patch 9.25, and perhaps there'll be a little bit more to it. And I suppose then you just sort of wonder, well, okay, will they try to do anything else? Will they, if the PvPers get a new season, will they just throw together a new Mythic Plus affix? Will they do something for gear? I mean, I don't really know. They've done all sorts of things to try to make these expansion lulls not feel as bad. In Wrath of the Lich King, they added the Hallian encounter, which is a bit odd. In Mists of Pandaria, they did XP boost periods and things like that to try to get people going. It's very hard to know. But that there is a 9.2.5, I think, is heartening. It at least shows they have somewhere where they can slot content in. And I do think about patch 6.2.3 of Warlords of Draenor. That was a pretty damn big patch, because that added in time walking and it added in mythic dungeons. Yeah, it had mythic dungeons and valor points that was just sort of there for a brief enough period at the end of Warlords of Draenor. So this idea of a sort of very light content and systems patch that's also a bit of an epilogue, it has existed before. It's just a question of, how far will they actually push the idea this time around? Hopefully decently far. Now, you might be wondering just sort of what my predictions are for the next expansion. And for that, it's pretty damn simple. I mean, look, the one thing that's leaking everywhere is Dragon Isles. Now, some of those leaks could be real, some of those could be fake. It's pretty damn hard to know. I mean, it's impossible to know without, asking Blizzard, and they're certainly not going to respond. But stranger things have happened. I mean, Warlords of Draenor was leaked. It was fully leaked, and nobody believed it. There was a leaker who actually predicted multiple expansions. I believe, was it Chinese or Korean forums? I forget exactly, but there is that leaker, and they had held true for a while. Who knows there? But Dragon Isles does make a lot of sense based on how Rathian was looking for it in BFA, and then based on just some of the things they've done lately and how I think they could tie Elune into the Dragon Isles and just make a whole bunch of those storylines mesh together. Plus, I mean, they did the Dragons promo over Christmas. Now, the potential of a Light Void expansion is absolutely there, but I don't think they really are going to do that next. I just don't get that vibe. When I kind of look at the light stuff that's being played around with, the Dreadlords infiltrating the light, all of that, those sort of narrative hints that are being dropped, that's all quite cosmic-y stuff, and I think they'll do that the expansion after the Dragon Isles, to be honest with you. Plus, in an interview, I think Ian very much did suggest that they're going to, maybe do sort of one more cosmic out there exploration expansion, and then maybe next a more homey expansion, right? Which kind of means more Azerothian. And all of that just points to Dragon Isles for me, to be honest. I don't know, man, it just makes sense. I mean, why do they mention the Dragon Isles in BFA, right? I mean, you look at these leaks, like, let's just say, I mean, one of them could be right. I forget which one it was exactly, but I remember me and Matt doing a segment on this leak during stream, and it was the one that we thought was the most likely. And a part of that was because the leak actually came out before the cross-faction stuff was announced, but it basically predicted the cross-faction stuff. And that was a Dragon Isles leak. So that to me does tip the scales more toward Dragon Isles. If I was betting, I would say Dragon Isles, to be honest with you. It's what the leaks suggest, and while Light and Void could be the next thing, I just don't see it. I think it'll be a bit later. Now, as for the features, well, I think the obvious one people really want is player housing. I'm 50-50 on that. I think Blizzard wants to do it, but I also think that it would probably be quite hard. I just have a feeling that it would be really janky and messy in this engine, and they'd probably need more engineering time. If you told me it was going to be the next expansion, I would believe you, but I would suspect the expansion after that, to be honest. I couldn't call it. Now, the other thing then, I remember when Shadowlands came out, one of the top comments from people was just like, there's no new race. There's no new class? What the hell? Because, of course, we hadn't had one since Legion, and the way that it had went, there was TBC, no new class. Wrath, new class. Kata, no class. Mop, new class. WoD, no class. Legion, new class. BFA, no class. Shadowlands, no class. So people are like, wait, what gives? We're used to this. By that, it would make decent sense for there to be a new class in this expansion, wouldn't it? Right? So I don't think that's a completely out of the cards, completely crazy thing. We haven't had a new one since Legion. Now, the one thing that could make you think there'd be no new class is just the game getting more complex and all of that. But I think with Borrowed Power, they've probably learned their lesson. All right, I think they've probably learned the lesson. So assuming there's no crazy new borrowed power that will make the game extremely hard to balance, then yeah, I would not be surprised. And as for what the class is going to be, well, through the different leaks, I've seen various forms of, dragon and then something like a dragon knight. I think that's a thing in Elder Scrolls Online, actually. But anyway, a dragon something. And that's, I think, all predicated on the next expansion being themed after the Dragon Isles. Now, if that is the case, then I would expect the new class to be Draconic in its theming. And that's just because, Mists of Pandaria brought the Monk, Legion brought the Demon Hunter, Wrath brought the Death Knight. They always seem to make the new class be tied into the theme of the expansion. And as for what a Dragon Knight could do, I mean, you could see them do tank healing and DPS. And I think when possible, they do probably like to do that when they're adding a new class, just because, more healers, more tanks, generally good for queues and some of the health of the game. Now, if it's a Light and Void expansion, then, I mean, who the hell knows what they could do with a new class? They could go absolutely bonkers. I'm not sure it would sort of go as well with players, though, as maybe a more dragon-themed one. And, I mean, everyone just seems to have decided the next expansion is Dragon Isles anyway. I mean, there certainly have been hints. So, as I said, if I was a betting man, I would still place it on Dragon Isles. just based on the leaks. Especially, it's just, man, that leak that predicted the cross-faction stuff, pretty much spot on, and before Blizzard released it, I mean, that's pretty damn convincing, isn't it? If I think of other things, with the character of Rathian, they've clearly been trying to build out, like, what a black dragon sort of looks and feels like, so maybe some of that will be worked into whatever the identity of the black dragons ends up being. So, yeah, look, assuming there's no big new borrowed power system, then I do think that a new class is actually likely for World of Warcraft. I guess then as for what I would want, look, I want a simple plotline, and then I want broad and deep world building. I think that they need to just make an A-plot that they can actually tell within the game. Really. Now, this is something some of the leaks have touched on as well, but if we could have more of the big, expensive CGI things, that would obviously be nice, and it could certainly drum up some buzz around the game. And if the next expansion has got, like, a nice premise and it's jiving with people, and then you have those big CG things, I think that could actually work really well. I mean, BFA was a very controversial expansion throughout its entirety, and yet the Saurfang stuff still did really well. Now, beyond that, I want a new take on world content. I'm bored of world quests. I want something new. I mean, come on, Guild Wars 2 innovated past you in 2012. How can you innovate past it now? What can be done? I just want to see world content that looks and feels different. I want patch zones that aren't just trying to do the Timeless Isle again. I just want to see something new. I want to see an evolution. Then for raids, I want a more diverse take in raid structure. I actually want us to be done with the big 10 boss raids. I'd rather have like a 6 boss raid and a 3 boss raid, or, you know, more one-off raids like Sartharian and Onyxia and things like that. I just think that would be good for the health of the game, really. And then it's like, what other things would be good for the game? Well, rolling revamps of the in-game holidays, but like true revamps that really do make them better. I want to see more cool creative stuff in the game. Mount races, jumping puzzles, Death of Chromie, like all the other things they could do. Like you've got bronze dragons. What can we do there? There's so many cool moments and scenes from World of Warcraft's lore that aren't in the game, but the bronze dragonflight could actually give us a narrative, sensible reason to go there. And then time walking. I want a massive revamp of time walking. I want to be able to say, hey, Throne of Thunder is one of my favorite raids. Let's go raid it, and it's actually going to feel like Throne of Thunder. And I want that to be a reasonable experience that I can have in the game, and there perhaps to be a reason for me to want to do that. Absolutely. And then obviously player housing or guild housing, just anything like that, I absolutely want. I'd like more ways to progress our characters other than gear. So like, can we get dyeable gear? Tintable gear, that sort of idea. Are there other ways to customize characters? I mean, one of the nice things about player housing is it's just a new way to reward you for doing things. I just want to see innovation there because gear, you can only squeeze gear so much. You can only push the gearing so far. And I think some of the recent expansions show us that, like, you can push gear to its breaking point and then you just kind of kill people's motivation a bit. For other things then, I like deeper professions. I like deeper economic gameplay. I would like to see archaeology be revamped basically into a new game thing, a new game system. I think that could be really cool and it's woefully underused. I'd like to see Suramar style endgame zones with loads of questing, like narrative content. I want ways for us to get more powerful in those zones, to feel mastery over the world, but I want that to happen in a world with radical alt-friendliness as compared to what they've done so far. I think that ultimately is just the better way to do things. And then other things like, look, War mode, I just don't think they've made good in War mode. The most fun I had with War mode was actually the little faction assaults in patch 8.1 of BFA, but I'd love to see what they could do with War mode, to be honest. I think there's a lot of potential with World PvP. I'm not exactly sure how to get it, but I really would like it. And then I guess it's just those things that are nice to haves. Like the next version of the Mage Tower. What's that going to be? Class quests. Class customization things. We had Warlock Green Fire. What else could we do? I just want to see how far they can push things outside of the 3 main pillars of the game. As for the main pillars of the game, it's like Mythic Plus is Mythic Plus. It's just changed the texture of a dungeon to be kind of further away from what I would really like from an MMORPG dungeoning experience. I guess if we could just have more mega dungeons, that would be nice, I suppose. You see, it's kind of tricky because doing all this content is just predicated in the game like being fun to play, and I think all of the sludge of Shadowlands just killed motivation for so many people in my guild, which meant that even like Tazavesh was there, but the whole guild had quit, and I don't really like playing with bugs. Now, thankfully, most of us are back, so you know, maybe my own experience would be better there, but it's just Mythic Plus. It's totally the right thing for one really large group of players, but I feel like there's another really large group of players who it doesn't really serve super well, and I'm not sure what we can do about that. Now, for other things, I mean, Valor points and Justice points, I basically want that to be a thing in the same way that you've got your Tomestones of Poetics and then your, you know, Astrology, right, in FF. Like, I just think that would be good for the game. You know, it's like, there's so many things you can actually do once you bring a system like that in, and I mean, certainly FF14 shows us that that's pretty reasonable. And that brings me on to gearing. I would like to see just more simple, plain, reasonable gearing. I think all that gearing budget that goes on to the Great Vault, because remember, the Great Vault's not giving you a bit of loot for free. You think that, but you're being duped. The Great Vault is taking gearing budget out of your week, and it's putting it on a big random box at the start of the next week, because they're ultimately only going to give you so much gear per unit time. So I would like to see the gear budget allocated to the Great Vault go into a more deterministic system that can be earned reasonably and decently targeted. Because I just think that feeling of, you know, oh, it's not the thing I want, that really sucks. So I want to see that kind of take in gearing. And for other things then, I mean, I would like solo queue RBGs. I think that would really, really be great. And then just, you know, evolution, I guess. If I was to say anything, it would be evolution. We've had lots of iteration of the same thing. What I want to see is I want to see WoW evolve and then just look and feel a bit different. And then finally then, I guess there's the mobile game. I have no idea, really. I mean, there's obviously cookie-cutter formats of mobile games that work, like those, you know, Age of, Clash of, Warring Clans, Legends, you know, just all those games. I hope they don't do one of those. That would be unfortunate. There's the Diablo-like games, but obviously Diablo Immortal exists for that. There's the party-based battler games like Raid Shadow Legends. Hope they don't do that. I don't know, those just tend to not be that fun. Now, there are full-blown like MMOs like Lineage 1 and 2 mobile, I guess. But I'm beat. I mean, they could do pet battles. We know at one point they were working on an almost Pokemon Go-like Warcraft experience. I'd be interested in seeing their take on that, but Pokemon Go is like, it's a thing that's happened. I don't think we need the Warcraft entry of that multiple years late. So I really struggle to know what this mobile game could be. I just hope it's not scummy. It's possible to have brilliant and really fun mobile games, but when the energy bars and the timers and the gem stores come in, oh man, then they just start to lose me. Anyway, that's it. That's the near future of World of Warcraft as I can see it, and as I can best analyze it when I try to apply the principles of the past to the dates that we've got now. So let me know, do you think I was off base? Do you think I'm absolutely talking shite? Let me know down below. Thanks for listening, and yeah, I'll see you next time.